Hello and welcome to Audible Anomaly, the podcast where we foster deep and meaningful conversation designed to help get you through your darkest days. I'm your host, Josh, and in today's episode, we are talking about friendships. A wise man once said, friends are God's apology for your family. So, I thought it'd be pretty good if, I did something like get my friends together and start a podcast, but also use an episode of the podcast to talk about how to maintain good and meaningful and healthy friendships and relationships. So, in order to have that conversation naturally, I need to have it with somebody. So, who better than, my lovely friends? So, let's check in with them this week. I'm going to go over to you, Kevin. How was your week this week?
My week was pretty solid. Nothing particularly interesting happened. Except, we had free ice cream at work. Always wonderful.
Ooh.
That was about it. Just another week.
There's plenty of free ice cream.
Hey, that's always a good week at work.
Absolutely.
It's been especially hot lately here, so definitely take it. That's for sure. All right, Davey. How about you? How was your week?
My week was good. I had a little bit of a down moment having to turn down a job I really wanted to take. But I'm at this point in my life where I'm not willing to take jobs that aren't going to pay me for what I'm worth. So I'm going to be a little more picky. Not that I'm really in a position to be, but I'm going to be, cuz I need to do what's right for me in my future. I've also been playing a lot of Final Fantasy 14. If y'all are into video games and MMOs, it is probably one of the best on the market right now. And it's been a lot of fun playing it. So that's taking up literally all of my time.
Can confirm. I'll leave you to play the MMO for me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for taking that sacrifice and, just being a good friend in that regard.
How about you, Premium? Or Josh, how was your week?
Blurring the lines. But no, my week was okay. Honestly, really, the story of this entire week has been my nagging hip injury. Like, I just don't know what the heck I did. I can't sleep like on it or even in a comfortable position. That was a hard word for me to say for some reason. But yeah, it's I don't know what it is. It's just been nagging me every day this week. So that's really been the main story, I'd say. But yeah, other than that, just doing a ton of research on friendships, and why friendships are important if they are indeed important. And spoiler alert, I think they are. But we'll get into that and why, and and how to maintain them. So I thought it'd be kind of cool, and obviously we all know what friendship is, so we don't really need to like define friendship or something like that. But I thought it'd be pretty cool if we did look at some statistics and fun facts about friendship before we kind of get started with the episode. So one of the very unique things in the animal kingdom is that we're one of the very few animals in the entire animal kingdom that actually partakes in quote unquote friendship. Obviously, we see a lot of sexual relationships in animal kingdom because, of course, nature tells us we need to reproduce and stuff. But in terms of non-sexual relationships, not many really animals do. I think it's like a couple of primates, some whales, some elephants. There might be a handful others. But other than that, there aren't really many animals that do friendship.
Can I say that one of my favorite friendships in animals?
Yeah.
Cheetahs and dogs.
So here's the thing. There actually, yes, there is a deep correlation. Cheetahs are very shy in nature. So they need some sort of... They have this social anxiety. So the reason they're paired up with dogs is because dogs, they just don't care. They just love being around people, so they tend to always, especially in captivity, you'll see it more often with the cheetahs and dogs. But the usually cheetah pups are, or cheetah cubs are paired with dog pups, and they kind of grow older together, and they teach them how to be social and such, which is very, very cool.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a cool, interesting fact that every time I go to the zoo, I try and look out for dogs and cheetahs together.
Yeah, it's a very, very unique friendship for sure. But yeah, fun fact of the day, right there: cheetahs and dogs. Not as crazy as you think. But yeah, so looking at human friendships and relationships, it's kind of interesting because roughly 62% of adults say they have between 2 and 5 close friends. Yet 20% of them regularly or often feel very lonely, despite having these close friends. And the loneliest person, if you will, are single millennial men. At least in the studies, they seem to be considered the loneliest. I think it was followed closely by Gen Z, by like a percentage point. And it's fascinating to see that, like, yes, you may think you have close friends or say you have close friends, yet you still feel, a little bit lonely at times. Looking at where these relationships are made, 42% of adults meet their friends at work. 35% meet their closest friends through other friends. And 29% make friends in their neighborhood. Roughly 25% of adults become friends with one or two of their neighbors. Neighbors are defined as those who live within easy walking distance. So a fourth of people are making friends in their neighborhood, which I don't know for you guys, but for me, I find that very interesting, especially when we're looking at, we'll say, like our demographic or like people around our age. At least in our area, it's more likely that we're seeing people live in like apartment buildings or like high density populated areas. So it's like, I don't know about you guys, but like ever since I've lived, in one of these apartments away from home per se, I've like never met neighbors or anything other than like the occasional, "Hey, how's it going?"
I think because we live in California, it's just a different demographic.
Yeah.
I think we live in this environment where there's always people everywhere, and our first inclination is just ignore them, deal with your own stuff, be your own. I think in a lot of Midwest towns and a lot of Midwest areas, that's a lot more prevalent. I've noticed it with my family that's out in the Midwest. That's just the case because there's not as many people. So generally speaking, people are going to go out and talk to their neighbors because they're close by and they're looking for people to talk. Where we grew up in the environment of, I see 1,000 people in front of me. I'm just going to worry about myself.
Yeah. I think that's the main case for just any major city, really.
Yeah.
And LA, even not LA proper, but the greater LA area kind of falls into that. It's, like I said, very vastly different once you really enter San Bernardino, pretty much all the way to the ocean.
Yeah.
Concrete jungle. So, it's very, very interesting to see a lot of these places, and looking at the science of it, and we'll get into that a little bit later. It's very interesting to see that, where most people make friends through work, like us. There's that level of consistency there, which, so we'll get into. It's very also really interesting, at least in our current adults, that the case tends to be opposites don't really attract. Which, if you think about it on like a surface level, it kind of makes sense. You typically want people who see eye to eye with you, who have similar belief systems, who, maybe even look a little bit similar to you, might have similar background to you. We're definitely not an exception to that rule. So when looking at a couple of the major areas, in terms of religious beliefs, 62% of adults said their friends tend to have similar views. in terms of race and ethnicity, 74% were similar. Social status, 70% were similar. Political views, 62% were similar. And the current life stage, 69% of them said they were in a very similar position. So, at least in adults, and we're looking millennial upward, tend to find ourselves relating and becoming friends with things that are familiar to us, which not always a bad thing, not necessarily. Like it's just kind of interesting to see that in studies and how it actually ends up playing out. When you look at younger generations, we'll look at teens, for instance. 81% said of the above, they tend to not really care. And it's an interesting phenomenon because a lot of, especially school friends, tend to be more diverse, assuming your school is more diverse. Because you don't know much about the world. B, you find yourself in a similar situation with just a bunch of other people just trying to get through life and try to get through school. So you tend to just find yourself not really caring about those differences as much. And the Gen Z, and again, we know how I hate the overgeneralization of the generations, but I digress. Gen Z, 63% of Gen Zers said they actually enjoy spending time with people who are different from them, which is kind of cool. I mean, I'm definitely open to it. I don't really care. Like, I've been always of the mindset of just love unconditionally and just treat everyone really freaking nice because at the end of the day, we're all human. We all have the same feelings, But yeah, so we're seeing this kind of trend, and hopefully this will continue through our lifetime of differences don't matter. And hey, guess what? They really don't, But yeah, like it's hopefully a trend that'll, like I said, hopefully just be a thing of the past. We'll just get past it all. But like I said, we'll end up seeing what happens. And then there's a follow-up study here that's kind of interesting. They took a look to see how long it actually takes for people to become friends. Now, this was a closed system, so the numbers tend to be a little bit lower compared to like real world environment. But they found that around the 40 to 60 hour mark, acquaintances become casual friends. Around the 80 to 100 hour mark, casual friends became friends. And it took about 200 plus hours for friends to become good or best friends. So it takes time. It takes time to build that relationship and build those bonds and being able to call someone a good friend. There's a lot that has to happen there.
A lot of bonding.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So with those fun facts and things out of the way, let's touch on why I think it's important to have friends. Probably the most damning and apparent one, as we saw in our longevity episode 8 of the podcast, which looked at what factors affect your lifespan. Loneliness damages our body. We know it was, according to the study that came out, it was equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, which also in that episode we found out was about 3/4 of a pack a day. About the equivalent to being an alcoholic. And it's twice as harmful as being obese, which is mind-blowing. That just the sheer fact of feeling alone and having that loneliness can affect your body so drastically. Which this is all kind of kicked off in like the question of how loved and supported do you feel ends up being a greater predictor of health and longevity than any other factor in your life. Even if you have a predisposition to heart disease, even if you have a predisposition to cancer, feeling loved and supported overall tends to be a better determinant of how long you're going to live, which is kind of mind-blowing. Like, when you really think about it, you know?
Yeah, I kind of get it, though. We're very social creatures. You know, even the people who generally tend to like their solitude and on their own, they still find ways to be social, whether it through animals, whether it through inanimate objects. But like, sometimes you just like to get through a day and to get through life, you need people.
Yeah, you definitely need some sort of support system for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, having that support system, it's very important to get us through tough times. And here's an interesting thing of like, yes, I know like in last week's episode when we talked about burnout, we were like, oh, you know, therapy, a great tool, but it's also one of those where you have to realize they're not there 24/7. You know, it might take them 24 hours just to respond. So you need, you know, either friends, maybe even family, you know, if you're that close, that can help bridge that gap and like bolster your support system and be there kind of when you need them. It's very important that you have that, you know, those people around you to help you out, even if it is just a pet or something they can confide in.
Yeah, and it isn't always about listening either. Sometimes it's just about like life tasks, like moving, just having someone there to help pick some stuff up, get it into a truck or a car, and get it to the next location. You know, moving on your own can be such a daunting task, and just having some people you love around you helping you, and then at the end of the day, you can all feel accomplished together. You know, it's a big thing. It's a big thing to feel like you shared a moment with somebody.
Yeah, for sure. And we've all been there where we've helped each other move, which is kind of nice. Yeah, no, it definitely helps. Like I said, you all are kind of working toward a common goal, you know, and it's nice once you achieve it, for sure. Another cool thing about why friendship is important. Studies have actually shown that happiness can be contagious between friends. Those who were depressed were twice as likely to recover if they had happy friends. So that's actually a very unique thing. And of course, it's one thing to be happy, it's another thing to be like toxically positive. Like I've always been more of like a logical realist rather than an optimist or pessimist. I tend to be more pessimistic at times, but you know, that's just, you know, just slight severe depression. It's fine. But like overall, you know, just having those people around you, it's just good overall, especially if you're going through something.
Well, they say that you are the culmination of the 5 closest people to you. And I think
Like
obviously happiness level is probably a big factor in that as well. You know, if you were hanging around a bunch of people who are depressed all the time, you're going to be depressed.
Yeah. Yeah. We will, we'll touch on that a little bit later, but yeah, very, very much so. Very much so. You are very much a mirror of those who you surround yourself with, I think. For sure. Another one, you know, social connections, just connecting with others, have actually been shown to reduce our stress levels. So, you know, it's just, again, just one of those where just being around people, you tend to, even if you feel lonely in that place, but just having that little social connection, even if it's just someone handing you a plate of food at a party and you're in a corner, might make a difference. You never know. And the last and probably most obvious of the bunch, we're simply more likely to survive in groups. just a survival thing. I mean, frankly, it's believed to be part of the reason why a lot of polygamist cultures tend to believe in polygamy. Like, I think it's, don't quote me on this at all, but I believe I read somewhere it was like in Islam, the part of the reason why they believed in having multiple wives was because if something were to happen to the husband, the many wives would at least be able to help each other survive, because especially in the Middle East, very rough environment to live in. So don't quote me on that, but that was something that one of my classes had mentioned. So blame my teacher for telling me wrong if I am wrong on that one. But that was the information that I was given. And logically kind of makes sense. I don't agree with it, but logically it kind of makes sense.
I mean, that's just human nature, right? Is pack mentality. Not necessarily pack mentality, but
well,
community-based mentality.
Right. And even when people tend to segment off, they tend to segment off and say, I can build this community better. So it's always just a matter of building community and how your community ends up looking like, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's take a look at, how to maintain a friendship. And then we'll get into kind of like our own kind of personal story and how we've maintained our friendship. Because at times, we've kind of fallen off. At times. It's just kind of life ends up being life, but as they say, life finds a way. Now we're all here to, still, obviously, we're still great friends. It's safe to say that. And yeah. And I will eventually win in Risk Legacy. It's an eventuality.
We'll see.
Maybe.
It's an eventuality, not an if.
Not a guarantee. Really not. No guarantees.
No guarantees against that as well.
True.
So, you never know. I'll just flip a board and then declare myself the victor. That is the great way to pay for a positive friendship. That is tip number 1. Play a game and flip the board over.
If you're losing, declare yourself the winner and storm off.
Correct. They can't correct you if they don't have a chance to rebuttal. No. So I'll bring up the quote again because I just love it so dang much. Look for people who are headed in the same direction you want to go and join them. Really just one of the keys to really building any friendship is you need to find that common ground in one capacity or another. So there's believed to be kind of 3 base foundations, and it's kind of like a pyramid almost. Not a pyramid scheme, but a pyramid of kind of friendship. And it starts with positivity, and the other 2 are consistency and vulnerability. So those are the sides. Ultimately, in order to have like a healthy, quote unquote, healthy friendship or relationship, we desire to be seen, safe, and satisfied in those relationships. So we'll start with the positivity side of things. We definitely want to build your friendship on a foundation of positivity. Because last I checked, how often do we want to be friends with someone who's cranky, whiny, or manipulative? I don't think anyone really wants that. And if you do, hey, just know you're getting yourself into. We won't judge. But, ultimately, we do want to feel joy. We want to feel good. We want to feel accepted. Right? There's that positivity that comes, out of it. That doesn't necessarily mean that we want to obviously cry on people's shoulders, but in order to remain kind of healthy, the positive interactions definitely need to outweigh the negative interactions. Kind of just makes sense. Just build a solid foundation of let's do positive things. Like, let's just be happy, be good.
Let's have fun together.
Exactly. The kind of the next 2 kind of go hand in hand. we'll talk about consistency. So this is kind of defined as like the hours that you spend together, the history that you end up creating, right? This is where you get to know each other. This is where, you build trust. You have that consistency. You're able to, because you spend so much time with them, you're able to know if you approach them with something, how they're going to respond. You build that trust. And this is why we see, especially in the stats, you make a lot of friends at like work or school because you're constantly attending. There's that consistency. You're going to show up every day at work and see that person. You're going to show up to school. You may even show up to like church or, what have you. And you're seeing that person. You have that constant thing where you're seeing them and you're building that rapport. You're building that consistency with them. Right. And kind of what turns this into, rather than, oh, hey, I see that person every day, into actual friendship, I think, is the vulnerability stage, where this is where you start sharing and letting other people in, right? It's not just sharing your insecurities and your skeletons in the closet. Of course, at times that does have to happen, but it's also talking about, what's going well, what are your successes, what are your dreams, your aspirations, just that willingness to be a little bit vulnerable and not worry about judgment. You have, it's being able to articulate what, we're feeling and being able to ask others for help whenever we need it, right? It's being able to feel like you are being seen and you're worth something, right? So you build up on positivity, and as you go up and up and up this pyramid, until you get to the top where your closest friends are, you have the consistency and vulnerability. The more you're consistent and vulnerable with people, the more, A, hopefully they're reciprocating in a healthy relationship, and B, you're able to build, up those friendships, and then you'll have your select few at the very top. The quote here is, at the end of the day, we want to feel loved. In order to feel loved, we only feel loved if we feel known, and we can only feel known if we actually share ourselves, right? So you kind of have to go through that process in order to, build up the relationship, really. And obviously, it's important to focus quality over quantity, because it's very easy for us, and a lot of us tend to fall into, like, especially popularity contests. I mean, you see it really everywhere at any stage in life, of like, oh, I know this many people, and it's like, well, yeah, but how many people do you actually know?
Yeah,
that was a lot of no's in one sentence. I apologize.
I know.
Yeah, tell me about it. I said it. So there's that notion of, like, we need to remember to focus on building meaningful relationships, not just a relationship. Because I can have a relationship with a cashier at, I don't know, my favorite teriyaki spot. Doesn't necessarily mean that means anything. It's just I see them every day because I'm ordering way too much teriyaki from them. Doesn't actually mean anything. So building those really meaningful and powerful friendships, those are the ones that get you through some stuff, So I think like here we can kind of like just talk about like our friendship history, if you will. I mean, obviously we mentioned it in the original podcast episode, the first episode, kind of our how we met at, the store, and then from there we always made it a thing to try and gather outside of work, because obviously you see work, but you can only interact so much before they think you're slacking off, and maybe you do a little. So you want to build that free time out. So I think one of the things that we did and that got us really close together was always just finding an excuse to spend time together.
Yeah. I think video games have always been a huge catalyst.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's always been a real help with the longevity of our friendship, is just that, and especially now in this day and age, the ease of saying, oh, hey, I'm playing this game. Do you want to join me over at your computer, at your place? You know? And then joining a voice chat and then just playing a game and chatting. Because one of the things about friendship is you don't necessarily have to be at the same place. You just have to be able to hear their voice a lot of the time. Like, text messages are great, but I feel like there's a power behind actually having a vocal conversation with somebody. And so even just an hour of just talking, whether it be during and doing an activity like video games, watching a movie or watching a show or anything like that, it's a very powerful tool in maintaining friendships.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I was going to say is, especially now in the age of remote work and such, there's a lot of studies that are coming out to show that, especially when you do a face-to-face over the internet, like, I don't know, a video podcast or just hanging out and like doing whatever, there's almost, our brain doesn't really dissociate that. Like, to us, it's almost the same thing as being physically in, in someone's presence. Sure, they might not get as touchy-feely, but again, in the age of remote and social distancing, not necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, there's always been the preference, and maybe it just goes back to like older school type traditions or viewpoints of like, oh, I have to get in person with people to really make a difference. But really, as we become more social creatures, and especially through, social media becoming a bit more prevalent, we're able to create bonds in different ways now. We have our video games where, like I said, like you mentioned, we can just hop in a voice chat, let's go, or, just spending time just shooting the dust, even, in a podcast or even before a podcast, just chatting, and just talking about each other's day or week or whatever. It's very interesting how beneficial that is, but in some capacity or another, you have to make time for that person. It needs to be a conscious effort.
Yeah. There has to be a level of caring. I feel like there's a lot of people who ask me how my day or my week or however is, but there's a difference, right? Because when it's actually coming from someone who cares about that answer, you feel so much more close to them, right? Because clearly they care about your well-being. Oh, cool. Well, I want to spend a little more time with this person because they care about me more than I probably care about myself.
Yeah, there's that notion there of like you're being seen, rather than just heard. Because I mean, all the time, like my default is, "Hey, how's it going?" For whenever I see like their neighbors, doesn't necessarily mean. I mean, I care about what their answer is, but 99% of the time, you just go, "Oh, it's going well." Well, okay. Like, I was hoping another answer, but it's okay. Yeah. It's being able to caring is very much a part of it. Making sure that not only are your needs being met, but that you're meeting their needs as well.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it kind of onus falls kind of on both sides of like, are you, you ask the question, are you okay? The onus is on me for asking you, but it's also on you for being able to be open enough to answer that actually, right?
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, I'm fine, but you're really not fine. That whole meme of things, but
when you say you're fine, but you're really not fine.
Exactly. So establishing that open line of communication is absolutely pivotal. And I think it's been something that we've been able to kind of have, if ever. I mentioned, there was a period where we kind of disconnected a little bit.
Yeah.
you know, it really kind of came down to like, even though like the most evident one I can think of is you and me, Davey. Like
Yep.
we lived very close to each other, but just one reason or another just didn't really communicate.
Yeah. I mean, I equate that to like life.
Things obviously happen for sure. And like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, like, I mean, I think I was through jobs and like, I think that's around the time I started going back to school as well. So like my mind kind of got focused on other things. But yeah, like I said, we eventually reconnected thanks to you, Kevin. And yeah, now I can't shut him up. Jeez, what do I do?
You're stuck with me. Oops. It's like that TikTok that's going to be around of like, oop, you showed me compassion. Now you're stuck with me. I'm your problem now.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is even though we had that moment of disconnect, Josh, I never really felt that we weren't friends.
Oh,
or I never really felt that disconnection at all. Even though it literally was like a couple years where we just didn't like, we talked maybe once or twice, but it wasn't a lot. I still felt like, oh yeah, Josh is a close friend.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think that's a part of adulthood, you know, and I think that's something that people have to realize is that part of friendship is also the mentality of it as well. Like you have to really still believe that they're your friend, and they also have to believe that you're their friend, you know? Because you can go a couple years without talking, and as long as you are both faithful, I guess, in the friendship. I know it's a weird saying, but it's the word that my brain came up with. But you're still faithful within the friendship, then like you guys are still friends. I don't know.
This is awkward because I cheated on you with Kevin. So
look, this is a friendship triangle we've always had.
But for sure, like it definitely like there are going to be moments where life is going to hit you. It doesn't help, especially now when you've had, like I said, more time to think and more time to like to yourself, where you're not really able to see those friends, where you start really thinking about it, and it kind of puts a lot of those friendships in a really perspective, and I think that's like one of the things that I think we all kind of need to do from time to time is just take that time off to kind of assess our little pyramid and see where people actually are. Because if you find yourself, especially in a position where you don't really see yourself having any close friends, like chances are there's people in your life that are there that maybe you might need to prioritize a little bit more time to, maybe move them up the proverbial pyramid, you know, into a closer relationship and building those things. Because it is very much a two-way street. And it's interesting because there's another trio, obviously, that I have of friends that I'm kind of blessed with having as well. But it feels very much like, how to put this in a way that won't like piss them off or anyone off, really. It seems, at least right now, we're in that moment where it seems to be a bit more one-sided, and that can happen from time to time. It's not a bad thing. It, like you mentioned, it's just life kind of intervening.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's one of those where, especially if you have friends, like maybe sometimes you gotta step out of like your comfort zone a little bit, kind of become the leader, kind of set up an event of like, hey, like Friday at 3:00, you guys doing anything? Let's go out. Let's do something. You know, kind of just trying to rebuild that. You know, and just be like, hey, like obviously, like we're all kind of swamped with life, etc. Like, let's just try and make, you know, a bit more conscious effort to like, you know, get together and like rekindle, because like, you know, those relationships are there and they're meaningful, and you don't really want to go them to waste if they're still positive.
I have a friend who is so good at this. He's a friend I've had since high school. His name's Keanu. I am very bad at reaching out to people.
What? No.
I know. It's shocking, right? And I have a tough time responding to things because my mind is so scattered. But I love this guy because he really keeps me in that, like, I don't give a shit if you haven't responded. I'm still going to reach out. And just be aware, like, sometimes your friends, like, I know reaching out is a two-way street, but there clearly is a difference between some people in people who are good at reaching out and people who are not. And you just have to be patient with one or the other, right? Don't feel like this person's reaching out too much because they want to see you, man. Like, or they want to see you, person. Like, they want to be with you, you know? And or maybe this person isn't reaching out enough, but maybe it's because they're distracted. So maybe you need to be that person who reaches out, you know? I know I get in my head of like, oh, I haven't heard from this person in a long time, and then in my brain I have to be like, well, you haven't done anything yourself, you dummy. Like, you don't make them the bad guy. You're just as bad in this situation too, and maybe they're not good at reaching out, so maybe that's what you need to do.
Yeah, I lost what I was going to say, but yeah, it's very much one of those where you just sometimes have to reach out, like, even if they're not, you know, doing the same. Because, like I said, you never know what situation they might be in too.
Yeah,
you know. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. That's part of the reason why, especially whenever I get text messages that I know like I'll eventually respond to, I leave them on read. Like I don't even read them. I leave them there so that I have that notification to come back to be like, okay, I need to respond to this person. Like, it's part of the reason why, at least on iOS, I wish you could unread things. I don't. If there is a way that I'm not aware of, please tell me. If there's an app or something, I should probably look into it. But like, I started doing that with like emails as well. We're like, okay, I need to come back to this one. I'll just like, leave it unread. That way I know to come back to it because I see that constant reminder and I'm using that notification as much as I'm trying to get away from using notifications after the social media episode. But yeah, like it's one of those where like that's kind of what I do, where like I like literally last night one of my buddies reached out to me and I was going to respond, left it. This morning it was there, so I responded, so just keeping that reminder, having that constant reminder of like, oh shoot, especially I've done it so many times where you end up reading it and you thought you responded because you remember everything you said and you came up with the response in your head, but you never even like remotely started typing any of it out. And you're just like, oh crap. So yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Kevin, you got anything else to add?
Not really. I mean, you guys have done a pretty good job outlining what you need. Just remember that the world is full of people who are afraid to take the first step. Like you guys have said, reach out every once in a while, even if you are concerned that they're not reaching out to you.
That's part of being in tune with your own kind of, not insecurity is probably the wrong word to use there, but like at the same time, kind of not. If you're worried about them not reaching out, maybe you need to extend the olive branch yourself.
I mean, if it's been a while, that fear of rejection can still sit real hard with some people, because you reach out to somebody and they don't respond, you get left on read. I think I had that happen to me recently. I reached out to someone. I was just like, hey, just letting you know, I hope you're doing well. Hope life's treating you well. And I got left on read. And it's like, oh, okay. You just have to realize, like, oh, okay. They've moved on. They made the choice not to reciprocate. Cool. There's plenty of people to make more friends with.
Yeah. And that's just one of those where it's like, especially if you're in that position of like, okay, you can move on. You're moving down the pyramid. That's okay. If you have people in your pyramid to move up, reach out to them. And if you don't, you need like help finding places. Kind of think of like places you frequent. Like, are you going to work every day? Maybe you're going to find a work friend. Are you, in school? You have a classmate that you keep seeing. Hey, I remember you. You never know who you might connect with. Just kind of looking at your own habits and even if you don't have any habits, I don't know, like go volunteering or something. You know, it's a great place because A, you know that A, you're doing a positive thing. B, you know that they're doing a positive thing. So already that's pretty decent thing to have in common, and you never know, you might have more in common than you thought. You know, just going out there and finding people. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes you're fortunate enough not to, but you know, sometimes it is necessary.
Absolutely.
You know, join join activities or something like an adult soccer league or bowling league or something. I don't know. People are bound to have some sort of interest.
Start your own cult.
It's very popular these days.
Yeah. At that point, people will join. They'll believe what you're saying. And then they'll kind of feel like your friends. You know, they'll be like your cult family. Start a little ranch, your own property.
But start small. Start with a podcast. No, I'm kidding.
We are not a cult. We are not a cult.
But no, all seriousness, like, you know, sometimes you do need to realize that, hey, maybe I don't have many positive interactions, and maybe these are, you know, trending toward more negative, and I'm not really getting anything out of it, because it does happen. And, you know, just use it as a learning experience, you know, and kind of move on from there, because sometimes you gotta trim the fat a little bit, you know? Sucks to do it, but sometimes you have to break up with a friend.
I've done that recently.
Yeah.
That's all okay. Well, what do our friends in the audience say, Josh?
Yes. So we have 4 this week. We will start with the prompt was, do you think friendship is important? Why or why not? Spoiler alert, they all thought it was important. Which was, I'm not going to say is the correct answer, but Aspiring Fate says, I absolutely think friendships are important. They are good overall in the sense of togetherness, exchange of ideas, and a feeling of community. Plus, not to mention that loneliness kills. Very true. Science says so. Moving on to Kelly. Friendships are definitely important. They can help you grow mentally and socially, regardless if the friendship is good or bad. You can learn a lot about one another. It prevents loneliness, and you create memories. Friendships can provide support, companionship, and a sense of purpose. Absolutely. Like I mentioned, friendships, good or bad, you can definitely learn a lot. And moving on to Meerkat. Friendship is definitely important. We are social creatures by nature. Without friends and that support system, it is very easy to fall into a dark place. Very, very true. And lastly, we have at the photographer. I tend to prefer having a handful of very close friends than be friends with everyone in the world. Certainly believe that friendships are important. Mine tend to keep me in check when I go crazy, and they're there for me when I need support. I talk to almost every one of them. I am close to on a daily, if not every couple of days, basis. It's almost like we're family. I also think that family members can be your close friends. Just depends on the relationship with that person. But without friends, I feel like life would be boring. Pretty true. Pretty darn true. But yeah, as me, so everyone thinks friendship is important. So I think that's the homework for this week. Take a look at your friendship pyramid and see where everyone is. See if you need to move some people up, move some people down, or kick people off the pyramid altogether.
Or reach out to somebody too. Somebody you may have talked to in a little bit and you want to talk.
Yeah, very, very, very good. Yeah. You never know who what friendships you might rekindle. You might end up working together again. And then quitting almost together as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, you just never know where life might take you. So I think that is going to do it for this week. So we'll get into our little plugs. If you haven't followed us on social media, especially recently, because I posted a picture from a couple weeks ago that we took together, our prom photos, if you will. Posted those for this week's prompt. If you haven't seen that, Instagram and Twitter at Audible Anomaly, very, very funny. Yeah, we'll leave it at that, but it's definitely worth a watch. Prom style photos from all three of us, hilarious if you haven't seen it. So check that out on the socials. If you want to reach out to us at email, you can reach out to us at audibleanomaly@gmail.com if you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes. For now, let's do our little plug section. Davey, what are you working on? Where can we catch more of your Final Fantasy streams?
Well, you can find me on twitch.tv/DPRLtron. DPRLtron. You can also find me at all social media at that tag as well. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Not that I have a lot, but it's there.
Yeah, we'll talk about building it up a little bit. But yeah, for me, you can find me at Bromium404 on YouTube and Bromium wherever you get your social media. And Kevin, how about you?
Quit looking for me, man. I'm not Waldo.
Well, he's not Waldo. You heard it here, folks. Although, if you were Waldo for the following Halloween, that would be amazing. Just saying.
We'll take that into consideration.
It'll make the list, but it won't make the cut. Anyway, next week, we are going to kind of wrap up our little stress and friendship and whole thing kind of mini series that we didn't really intend to make, but kind of made anyway. We're going to look at stress and how to better manage it. So you don't want to miss that. But until then, and next week, we've been Audible Anomaly. We hope everyone's doing all right, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye!